Ukrainian opposition is baring its teeth, threatening President Viktor Yanukovych with impeachment and vowing to bring tens of thousands of people onto the streets by the end of this week. All that after the government suspended work towards a free trade deal with the EU. And RT's Alexei Rashevsky joins us now live. Alexei, hi, nice to see you. So what's going on there where you are, actually? As far as we know, that the opposition is absolutely furious about the government's move there.
Indeed, some part of the Ukrainian society have had a very bitter reaction to the news that the country would not be signing the EU association deal next week. Protests have been taking place all over Ukraine since last night. You're now witnessing one of them at Kiev's central Independence Square, the place where the Orange Revolution started exactly 9 years ago. At some point during last night, there are more than 3,000 people over here. Right now we can see maybe several hundred, but we're expecting the numbers to multiply as working hours finish in Kiev. But that's, of course, nowhere near to what I saw 9 years ago here at Independence Square during the Orange Revolution, when literally this whole space behind me was filled with people. Several hundred thousand were here. In any case, we understand that the protesters, they're planning to stage their rallies at least until Sunday, when the country will officially mark the anniversary of the Orange Revolution. That's when we're expecting more than 70,000 people to hit the streets. No one knows whether those protests will be completely peaceful or may turn violent. You would not rule this out in Ukraine's case. But there is a rumor that they're planning to stage protests up until the Eastern Partnership Summit in Vilnius on Thursday next week. That's when Ukraine was supposed to sign the association agreement. So this is one part of the Ukrainian society infuriated by Yanukovych's decision. The other part, which also includes prominent political analysts and speakers in the political sphere, they have been saying that Ukraine, by not signing this agreement, may have in fact dodged a bullet. Some of these statements, some of these comments and emotions I've compiled in my report. Let's have a look at that. 2 months ago, it was touted as a done deal. On Thursday, Ukraine's government all but completely ruled out that an association agreement with the EU would be signed next week. Instead, rebuilding trade ties with Russia and CIS was made the priority.
Probably at some stage of ascending to the top, the weather is unfavorable.
The 180-degree turnaround comes after months of openly voiced concerns that Ukraine's economy would simply collapse if it formed the free trade zone with the EU, which in turn promised no compensations on potential losses.
I think it's a lucky escape, really, because I think that this deal was bad news for the Ukraine. It would be like somebody today going back in time to 1912 and buying a ticket for the Titanic. It would have been a national suicide for the Ukrainian government to have signed this.
Just a few days before the move, Moody's downgraded Ukraine's economic index to a pre-default level. That led the government to openly admitting that the already ailing economy was not ready for a leap of faith.
We haven't gotten a clear signal from our European neighbors that the losses which we had suffered in the last 4 months would be compensated by entering new markets and European markets. We will need to halt the work of a dozen of our enterprises, but our country can't afford firing tens of thousands of workers.
Alexei Rashevsky, RT, reporting from Kiev in Ukraine.
All right, then. And who's blackmailing who? President Vladimir Putin has addressed allegations that Russia forced Ukraine into a U-turn over its integration plans with the EU. RT's Lucy Kafanov has been listening to what the Russian leader had to say. So, hi there, Lucy. Claims and counterclaims. What indeed did Putin have to say then?
Certainly a war of words here in St. Petersburg. Now, we're actually here to cover the high-level economic meeting between Turkey and Russia. The Turkish Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan is here meeting with President Putin. They had a joint press conference where the Ukraine issue actually did come up in one of the questions. Mr. Putin was actually asked about allegations that came out in reports earlier on Friday, suggesting that the Ukrainian president had spoken to his counterpart, his Lithuanian counterpart, in a phone call in which he brought up Moscow pressure on the Ukraine to scrap plans for participation in this trade pact. Here's how Mr. Putin responded to a question about that. Let's take a listen.
I don't know what the Ukrainian president was talking about with his Lithuanian counterpart. Maybe we should ask our American friends about that. But so far, they haven't told us anything.
Now, he was, of course, joking, but what he was referencing there is the U.S. National Security Agency spy scandal, where the agency had been accused of wiretapping the phone calls of various EU leaders. On a more serious note, however, Mr. Putin lashed out at the European Union, suggesting that it's the EU, in fact, that's blackmailing and pressuring Ukraine in regards to this deal. Let's take a listen.
When I heard, and I just found out yesterday, that Ukraine has suspended, not cancelled, but suspended negotiations with the EU and wants to review everything, we heard a threat from the EU to Ukraine, all the way up to organising mass protests. This is pressure and blackmail.
Now, Mr. Putin also reiterated Russia's readiness to hold three-way talks with the EU, Ukraine, over trade and the economy. But sticking with the Ukraine and the European Union, Mr. Putin had actually referenced Turkey's long-standing bid for membership in the European Union, which hasn't been successful to date. A 50-year process, he said. He turned to Mr. Erdogan and jokingly basically said that he wanted to get Mr. Erdogan's input on this, since the country had tried for so long to enter the European Union. Mr. Erdogan had entered that, yes, this is a 50-year-old request, and that he wanted to answer with his own request, jokingly saying, asking for Russia to take Turkey into the Shanghai Organization for Cooperation. Pardon me. That's, of course, the six-party economic cooperation agency that Russia is a part of with several other countries, essentially jokingly making a statement about Turkey's inability so far to join the EU.
All right. RT's Lucy Kafanov just did some great reporting there. Lucy, thank you very much indeed. We appreciate it.